Uh, so in this session, we will be looking into in the previous sessions, we have already understood now that how our ARCHIS is useful for heritage and archaeological data management, and how the data can be modeled so that it is compatible to ARCHIS. So in this session, we will be looking into uh, how we can use controlled vocabularies within ARCHIS so that our data is standardized, and what options does ARCHIS allows us in terms of these control vocabularies. So the agenda items include control vocabularies, uh, how we can use these control vocabularies within ARCHIS, their structure and the associated terms of thesauri, concept collections, and concepts. We will see if there are any existing control vocabularies and what are the advantages of this system. All right. So starting with control vocabularies, uh, we can say the control vocabularies are a set of standardized terms that are preferred for a data set. And these allows us to ensure the consistency to control for any spelling differences that might rise up while we are developing the data, and any name variations for a single defined entity that could be generated as the part of data development process. Uh, uh, so let's see which attributes we can target with the control vocabularies and terms, and which attributes cannot be targeted and handled using the control vocabularies. We can consider this example. Where we have these attributes available within our data set. We had the information on person, organization name, the role, and in another table we have these informations available within our data set: the cultural periods, the site features formed, the shapes, locations, and whether if it's excavated or not. uh, so we can see that there are certain attributes in our data set which could be controlled using the standardized terms. For example, we can standardize our role attribute of the data set by defining standardized terms. For example, in case of organizations, the standardized terms could be an government institute or a conservation institute, or this could be an academic institute, a university. And in terms of in case of a person, the roles could be government authority staff or the university staff, or this could be a surveyor, or this could be a surveyor, an engineer, or any other standardized term that we think is useful uh, for our control data management. Similarly, we can see that we can define control terms for our cultural period, like every for every region the projects are working for. There are control terms for cultural periods. For example, in the South Asia, there are terms related to the Harappan period. Similarly, there could be other terms, for example, early Bronze Age, Iron Age, or the Roman Age. Uh, uh, and similarly, we can define standardized terms for our site forms or site shapes. For example, there could be standardized terms including there could be irregular side shape, there could be a rectangular side shape, and there could be a circular side shape. We can possibly not control our location attribute with the uh, control vocabularies because this includes a lot of variation, and we want to keep it open so that every person can so that we can have data from all the different locations. So once we have decided which of the attributes of our data set we want to control, uh, we can use our ARCHIS system, ARCHIS platform, to enforce these rules uh, on our nodes. So we now know that node is the smallest component of our resource, and we can see that there are different data types associated with nodes. So for example, we want to implement uh, control vocabularies on our feature shape. we can change the data type of this node to concepts. And what the arches will do now is that arches will only allow specific terms to be entered as the values for this attribute of our data. Uh, and similarly, this could be done for other attributes that we want to control using the control vocabularies. We will have an opportunity to see this in more detail in the coming slides. So this is the structure of how these control vocabularies can be seen within the arches. So there are different levels. Uh, So first level can be seen as the thesauri, and then there are the grouping of the concepts that are known as concept collections, and finally the concepts. Concepts are basically the terms that are included within our control vocabularies. For example, these terms could be uh, for a for a attribute of site shape. These terms could be a rectangular shape, a circular shape, or an irregular shape. So starting with the thesauri, uh, thesauri can be viewed as an aggregation of one or more concepts and the semantic relationship between these concepts. So thesaurus basically allows us to define the relationship between the different terms within our control vocabularies. These terms are known as concepts within arches. And it also allows us to perform different levels of aggregations and define the semantic relations between these. Uh, so thesauri is can be accessed and managed within arches through a tool that is referred to as reference data manager. So we will be looking into the interface of this tool as well. And both the projects will be developing their own dedicated thesaurus over the period of the projects. There would be a thesauri for MAEASaM and also a thesauri for MAHSA. So looking into the second level of the concepts is the concept collections. The concept collections can be seen as the grouping of the concepts. Uh, Again, mentioning that concepts are referred to as the individual terms that are within our control vocabularies. An example would be the concept or the terms, for example, rectangular, circular, oval, irregular. All of these can be grouped in a site shape types concept collection. So site shape types is basically grouping of these concepts. There could be other examples of the concept collections. For example, the cultural periods can be a concept collection in their own self. It would include the concepts of maybe Iron Age, Bronze Age, uh, or any other periods. Side feature types can be their own concept collections, and which would be the grouping of feature types. These feature types could include the mounds, forts, or other feature types that are in accordance to our project area. And also there could be a concept collection of site shape types. This is something we have looked into this. Site shape types is an concept collection, which includes these concept terms of rectangular, circular, oval, and irregular. Uh, so it looks something like this within our arches interface. This is the tool, reference data manager, that allows us to see all of these collections. And here you can see a broad range of possible collections that can be made. For example, these concept collections could be for the activity type, for actor type, address type, and so on. And we can see the example of site shape type available over here that we are discussing in this session right now. So once we have generated these concept collections uh, uh, for a particular attribute. So for example, we have generated this concept collection for our site shape attribute. So now we have defined the control vocabularies for this site shape attribute, and our arches now allows us to connect this concept collections with our specific node, so that the users can only enter control terms within our dataset, and nothing random could be allowed to be entered in that field. Let's look into the next level. So these are the concepts. Concepts are the vocabulary terms used throughout the artist database to define resources, and this could be seen at this level of the control vocabularies. And we already know by now that different terms like rectangular, circular, oval, irregular can be considered and treated as different concepts uh, for our site shapes concept collection. Right. So now, previously this section of the reference data manager was hidden by a blue box. And now you can see all of these individual concepts and terms are available uh, over here within the Arches interface. And these are considered the member hierarchy for our site shape type. We can see the concepts and terms here, circular, irregular, oval, rectangular. Uh, and as I mentioned earlier, so now that we have defined these control vocabularies and used arches to link these control vocabularies with our node, so now we can see that if we want to add any value about the site feature shape, our arches UI and arches interface is only allowing us to choose from the concept terms that we have defined within our control vocabulary. And there could be no fifth value unless it is defined within our control vocabulary. So what this is allowing us to achieve is that it allows us to ensure that our data is error free. There are no any sort of spelling differences, and it is very standardized image form. Uh, right. So we have looked into the basic levels and aggregation of the concepts within Arches. However, Arches also allows us to uh, uh, make higher level of hierarchies within the concepts. So, for example, we can start with a broader concept and continue narrowing it down to a child concept. We will be seeing it with an example of cultural periods in the next slide. But Arches deals with them in a parent concept and a child concept relationship. These are the semantic relationships that our thesauri allow us to cater for and define within Arches. So this would be a broader concept, also known as a top concept of parent concept. Then there would be a child concept. Uh, there could be further drill down, further hierarchy level of another child concept, and gradually we can move towards the narrower concept. So let's back it up with an example of the cultural periods. So we can say we have the broader concept of cultural periods, and within the cultural periods, we have first level hierarchy of Bronze Age, or at the same level, we have Iron Age. Within the Bronze Age, we have second level hierarchy, that is basically a narrower concept and the refinement of this broader term to include the concepts of early Bronze Age, middle Bronze Age, or late Bronze Age. Uh, Similarly, for the Iron Age, there are narrower concepts available: early Iron Age, middle Iron Age, or the late Iron Age. And depending on our data set and the requirement, if there is another uh, narrower level available within the Bronze Age, this could be defined at the third hierarchy level. Now we might be thinking what benefit this provides us in terms of controlling and storing data within Arches. So Arches knows, using this thesauri, Arches knows that these terms are related to each other. These concepts are related to each other, and for this broader concept, these are the narrower concepts. So, for example, if a person is searching the database and they might not uh, directly know that whether their site is present in a late Bronze Age or a middle Bronze Age, and they can search the database using only this attribute of Bronze Age. What Arches would do is that it knows that all of these narrower concepts are related to Bronze Age. So the results artist is going to return us would include the entries for all of these concepts. It would give us a sum up and a combined result for early Bronze Age, middle Bronze Age, and late Bronze Age. However, if you are very certain about your data and you can directly search for the early Bronze Age, then only the data set which have the attributes of early Bronze Age populated in the database, only that subset would come up. So this is really useful in terms of that we can do the broader research or a targeted search, uh, and the artist database would automatically handle and take care of the results based on the semantic relationships that are defined for these concepts within our thesauri. So before going to the next slide, let's quickly summarize what we have learned so far. We know that the individual terms within our controlled vocabularies are referred to as concepts. These concepts can have multiple level of hierarchies depending on our requirement. This relationship between the concepts is dealt with thesauri, that is accessed through the reference data manager of ArcGIS, and we can also group these concepts into concept collections that can be linked with our specific nodes within the graph so that our data is controlled. Let's go into slightly more details of other functionalities that ArcGIS provides us in terms of concepts. So ArcGIS allow us to define multiple labels for our concepts, and uh, so a concept can have a preferred label, or it can have many other alternate labels, and these could preferably be also be in different languages. So if we see the concept of mound, uh, if we have a concept of mound, we can associate different alternate labels with it. For example, uh, we can say the mound is also known as tell, or a mound is also known as tape, or there could be other terms associated for mound. For example, mound can have a specific term available in the French language or any other language. So uh, our ArcGIS platform allows us to define these multiple labels for our terms. So what is the benefit of this? When we have multiple labels for our concept, uh, it allows the users to search our database using any of these terms. So so if our database include the value of mount, however, we have defined within our thesauri that this mount could also be referred to as tel. It could also be referred to as tape. So when a user searches the ArcGIS database using its interface, they can enter either of these terms, like they can use mount, they can use tel, or they can use tape, and all of these terms would automatically return the same results that are concerned with the mount concept. So this is a really powerful tool that allows us to cater for different terms associated with one concept, and also cater for these concepts in terms of different languages, and in the concept of in the concept of internationalization. So when we have to define these control vocabularies, the projects can decide whether they want to start developing these control vocabularies from the very scratch, or are there any sources available online, uh, and are there any existing control vocabularies that are useful for each of the projects. So the Forum of Information Standard in Heritage provides us with one of the uh, with a control vocabulary. You can see here that there are vocabularies and present for archaeological objects. These are present for archaeological sciences, building materials, and there are a whole lot of other uh, things catered for within these fish vocabularies. More details for this are available at this URL at the bottom of these slides. Uh, we can start with these vocabularies as the basis and filter out the components if any of the terms and are useful for our own projects. And if these vocabularies are available in the ARCHIS compliant format, ARCHIS uses a format that is known as a simple knowledge organization system. If these vocabularies are readily available in that format, then we can use the ARCHIS reference data manager to import these vocabularies directly to our ARCHIS platform. However, it is very important to note if the format is compliant with ARCHIS or not. So to summarize, what advantages are being provided to us with these control vocabularies? So it allows us standardized data entry. We have seen that we can restrict our certain nodes within a resource graph so that no external value or no open value is allowed to be populated within it. So control vocabularies allow uniform data entry. Uh, it also allows us to increase our data discoverability. As we looked at the concept of the mound, it has different labels available in different. It has different labels like tel, tape, and also can have terms in different languages. So when we define these labels within our ARCHIS Thesauri, and then search our database using any of these terms, we will get the same results. And then this could also help us the semantic relationships that we define within our concepts to tell ARCHIS which concept is broader concept and which is a narrower one. We can then perform different types of broader, narrower searches on our ARCHIS database, as we looked into the example of cultural periods. Searching the Bronze Age would allow us to see all the records from early Bronze Age, Middle Bronze Age, and Late Bronze Age. And if we want to do any narrower search, we can select one of the concept values available within, like we can directly search early Bronze Age or the Middle Bronze Age or the Late Bronze Age, and we will get our required results. So these are some of the functionalities that are very useful in terms of ARCHIS platform. And over the course of the projects, both the projects will be working with the collaborators to define these thesauries for their own project regions. Thank you. This is about the ARCHIS control vocabularies, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Many thanks, Junaid, for this great presentation talking about the concepts and the controlled vocabularies and how it's managed and handled in ARCHIS. So if there are any questions, again, you can raise your hand or type in the chat box, please.
Yes. So
is there a question? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Junaid. Do you want? There's a question from Michael.
Yeah. Michael, would you like to speak it out?
Oh yeah, sorry. Just a quick question. Bronze Age has different meanings in different places, and even within one country, it has different meanings in different places. How are you coping with such temporal problems?
Yes. So this is in depth, mainly an archaeological question, but in terms of ARCHIS, I mean, so when we are defining our thesauri and these concepts and terms within our ARCHIS platform, we can associate notes with these concept terms that could provide us with more details what this particular concept term is referring to. However, you are right about that. This Bronze Age is different in different places, and maybe if anyone would like to address this question in terms of archaeology. So.
Okay, Azada, you can go.
No, just in terms of arches, another thing to add that in arches, the chronology can be added. And again, it's based on interpretation of the time and the periods in each region that we work with. And you can assign a specific chronology to a specific period that goes with, again, with the back and the controlled vocabularies of the system.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, of course, this is one of the big problems in archaeology, especially when you want to compare data that are chronologically contemporary, but may have been classified in terms of description of the chronology with different names or vice versa. So, for example, the work that we are doing with the MAEASaM for the Africa project, but I'm sure similar work is being done by MAHSA, is to actually create controlled vocabularies on chronology, where a period called in the same manner, Bronze Age or Iron Age, is then assigned a date that may be varying geographically. So there are three components here that we link together: the name of the period, its chronology in a particular area. Because as Michael said, Bronze Age may have a different chronology in Northern Africa. In Southern Africa, it doesn't even exist. So we have to cater for this. We are basing, there are a couple of tools that have been created in a Western world context in particular, initially by colleagues working in Europe. There's a tool that is called Periodo. We can add the links as we go along, that has been created exactly to solve this kind of problem, for allowing comparison of different named chronologies across, in this case, Europe. And it's been extended also to include other periods for other parts of the world. And then there's another project which is called Chronontology, which is about ontologies of chronological periods, that has been developed by the German Archaeological Institute, that is doing similar type of work with a different interface, where, for example, you can look up a particular period, let's say the Neolithic or the Bronze Age, and then a list will come up, and it will also tell you in which particular areas for which dates that particular period is used. And it's interesting, chronontology in particular, because you can often see the map that indicates the Neolithic of Africa, where that term is used and what time period is used in that particular area. The links have been put in the chat by Mahmoud for Periodo and for chronontology as well. So obviously you have to link your Arches database or any database to this type of vocabularies that assist you in making that link between the name of the period and its year time. Normally we use CE or BC rather than BP. So rather than before present dates for this type of vocabularies, but they do exist. And the idea is to use something that has already been discussed and created and agreed on internationally, to then assist your database being comparable and compatible across large geographic areas.
For Darfur, there are some historical periods which have unknown dates because there's so little research done in Darfur, so that people have estimated dates and they have no particular period assigned to them yet. They just have names.
Sadly, databases are not very forgiving from this point of view. We need to put some dates, but this is exactly why I think it is important to discuss with local archaeologists, how to create these vocabularies and also include some indications of uncertainty because there are many periods for which we're not so certain in terms of calendar years, as compared to a particular name that is given to a period. So I do understand the problem, Michael.
Okay. But are you going to try and create that before the project starts?
We are creating it now for the MAEASaM project.
Okay.
We are creating a basis based on published literature, and then we will be sharing these vocabularies with all our in-country partners so that they can be discussed, they can be criticized and changed accordingly to the local knowledge, because obviously as a team, we don't have detailed knowledge for every single area where we are operating.
There are quite a lot of differences of opinion about these things. That's the problem.
Yes, we will have to cater for them. Unfortunately, as I said, in a database, you have to ultimately make a decision and enter something, but there could be multiple type of definitions that are integrated. And then we can also add, which authors specifically make that the decision about that particular period, so that one can be aware that there are differences in opinion.
Thank you very much.
I'd just like to briefly add to what Stefania has said, and she's summarised well the complexity that we're dealing with, and the way in which archives can cope with this. But also, just to reiterate her final point about attribution, bibliographies, and source data, and that's something that is particularly important for what we're creating in Arches, is to be linking to published sources and unpublished sources about data. So it's not recording a sort of monumentalized final version, as it were, of a site, but actually gathering information about all the sites and their history and investigation, and multiple sources about that have been published about them. So that's very much part of it, is to link back to previous work that's been done, and just give a portal to kind of pull up all of that information together.
Yes, thank you. And if there are other questions, I think we still have some time. I don't see anything in the chat. Yes, we have a question from Ditunia. Again, I'm sorry if I'm misspelling your name. Can you unmute and ask your question, please? Ditunia, it's to you to ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I wanted to say I appreciate the presentations from Cambridge University, and I wanted to also ask about issues of copyright and intellectual and copyright, about the data that is going to be documented through archives, and what it means to the hosts, the people who host the heritage, what it means to them.
I mean, specifically to the, so we realize that these our projects are are covering wide regions and different multiple countries. For example, in MAHSA, we are dealing with parts of Pakistan and India, and in the MAEASaM, they are also dealing with a number of countries. So this is an important question about this data intellectual property and things. But as for the functionalities that are provided with the archives, we can have different levels of access for different people to the Arches platform. This is something that Azadeh also showed in her presentation, that we can define different user level access for different users to see to control how much information that they can see within our Arches database. So that's one way to restrict the access to data and the locations of heritage and archaeological sites. But yeah, if Azadeh, you would like to add anything, or
no, as you said, I mean, everything that will be collected for Arches are the things that with our partners we have the allowance and happy to add. And there are levels of, I mean, I said that Arches is open source and web-based and can be accessed, but level of access is what as developers and we can define and enforce. So if the accessibility of the data is concerned, then different level of access to be given to people from different even countries working on one project to access. And these are the things also that we're discussing among us to see how geographically also to be able to limit access to data when it goes all in the database. I think Stefania wants to add, yes.
I'm unmuting myself. Thank you, Ditunya. I think, in a similar vein, and here we are talking about the specifics of our projects, not Arches in general, is that the structure and the way we are operating for the MAEASaM project is that we are actually at present finalizing collaboration agreements with the various in-country institutions that are custodians of the sites and monument records of those countries, because ultimately the data belong to them and to the country. Obviously, and so they are the repositories and they will remain the repositories. There are benefits and issues with sharing sites and monuments data with larger publics. And there is a long-standing debate about what are the benefits of allowing basically everybody to have information on sites, and also the problems, including possible looting and possible misuse of this data. And as I said, there is a long-standing debate. So one thing is the copyright, which remains with the custodians of the data. One thing is also trying to find that balance between the benefits of sharing data for analysis, for understanding of archaeology across borders, and at the same time protecting the sites on the ground. And this is exactly why a system such as Arches, as Azadeh has already said, and Junaid have got systems in place that can be constructed to only allow access to the geographical location of some of the sites or some information that is more sensitive to certain users and not others.
And just to add to that, so yeah, MAHSA also is currently beginning collaboration agreements with our partners, and the collaboration agreements include agreements about publication and attribution, and that's also important. And I think it comes back again to the Arches, the database itself, which records information about actors, about ownership, land ownership, publication, previous works. So again, it's not just collecting archaeological data on its own. It's very much embedded within its context and the people who've been working with it. So that's very important to both projects.